so much, Board and Superintendent. And every year we just come and report to the board for transparency about how much we have raised and how much we gave back. I was going to let you know we raised about $168,000. We netted from 50 fellows this year, thanks to our community and the support we have from them. And then we gave away right at $95,000. $102.30 is how much we awarded in grants this year. And I did also want to let you know, because we had a few questions this year, that we do help in other areas with curriculum. We help with sending the special ed department to the YMCA. We just help wherever needed for different things when there's a need for the district. And so we appreciate everything that you guys do and do to help support us as well. And we're just very thankful for our community. So thank you. And I put the total of how much every campus has gotten back. And that should be it's up on the board, and then, and that's up to date, how much total we've given back since we started. So it's in your package as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate it. We are grateful for our Education Foundation. They do so much for our district and our teachers and our community, so thank you. Okay, moving on to the Achievement Spotlight. We have the Spanish Campus and District Spelling Bee winners, presented by Christina Sosby, our Curriculum for ESL Bilingual Coordinator.
Good evening, School Board President Ms. Gore, Dr. Morosky, and all GIC School Board trustees. This was our 4th year to conduct the Spanish Spelling Bee at Granbury ISD. This year, students competed at the campus level at our 2 dual language campuses, Bronner and Bacchus Elementaries. What makes the Spanish competition more challenging is that students must spell the Spanish word that include any and all special marks, as well as capital letters. The Spanish Spelling Bee champion for Bacchus was 5th grader Fernanda Rodas Morales, and the champion for Bronner was 4th grader Aranza Espinosa. Both of these students moved on to compete at the district Spanish Spelling Bee. The winner will now move on to compete at the regional Spanish Spelling Bee at ESC Region 11 on Tuesday, April 1st. Please join me in congratulating our 2025 District Spanish Spelling Bee champion, Aranza Espinosa, and the runner-up, Fernanda Rodas Morales.
Do the English spelling bee? All right, we'll do it at the same time. All right. I have the privilege of coordinating our District and Area 18 spelling bee, and tonight I'm honored to present our 2025 winners. Our area champion will compete at the Scripps Regional Spelling Bee on March 29th in Fort Worth, with a chance to advance to the National Spelling Bee in Washington, D.C. Students, when I call your name, please come forward to get your certificate, and then we'll get your photo. Please join me in congratulating Christian Negretta, Acton Elementary. Sebastian Haro, Bacchus Elementary. Luke Llewellyn, Bronner Elementary. Aubrey Ross, STEAM Academy at Membrano. Ashlyn Olschlegel, Oakwood School. Ryan Crawford, Granbury Middle School, who is also our district runner-up. And then our representative for this year, who will be moving on to the regional spelling bee from Acton Middle School, Maria Hustak, who is a repeat winner for us, correct, Maria? Haven't you won before for your campus? Yes. Several times, I think. Thank you for celebrating these outstanding spellers with us.
If we have any parents in the audience, would you please stand and be recognized? Next up, we have Schottenkirk Seniors of the Month for January and February.
Good afternoon. It is my privilege to be presenting the Schottenkirk Seniors of the Month alongside Mr. Robinson to Lily and Edith O'Carroll. I have something to say about Lily McCoy. It's an honor to present Lily McCoy as the Schottenkirk Senior of the Month for January. Senior at Granbury High School, Lily served as president of the Junior Optimist Club and leads by example through her hard work, community service. She actively seeks volunteer opportunities, always striving to support those in need, even in the face of challenges. Lily remains positive and continues to inspire those around her and her kindness and commitment to helping others. Lily will be going to the University of Alabama and studying early childhood education.
I get to introduce Pete O'Carroll. It's an honor to recognize Pete O'Carroll as the Schottenkirk Senior of the Month. A senior at Granbury High School, Pete has excelled in academics, athletics, and music, crediting his success to the support and encouragement of his parents. Their guidance has helped him thrive in multiple areas, pushing him to always do his best. Pete is currently exploring college options with LSU, Baylor, and Tulane among his top choices. So well done.
And if we have any parents in the audience? Any other parents? Okay, next up is our GHS Senior Football Academic All-State, presented by Coach Allison and Coach Moore.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us tonight. I have the honor of introducing our football players who received Texas High School Coaches Association Academic All-State. A little bit about that. How you receive that is, one, you have to be a senior. Two, you have to have a 92 or above GPA for your entire high school career. And then they also take into account your class rank as well as your ACT and your SAT scores. So they take all of that together, and that's how you make this team. And I'll say, you know, these guys truly exemplify what it means to be a student athlete. The time that they put in to their sport and then to excel at such a high level for their academics, I can't say enough how proud I am of them. And not only, obviously, are these young men here tonight with us outstanding student athletes, but more importantly, these are awesome kids. And I'm just honored to be able to be here tonight to introduce them to you. First here is Hayden Meyer. Next up is Eli Cisco. Next up is Abel Aguado. Mason Rucas. And last one is Axel Davila. Not the last one, sorry, Phoenix. You're looking at me like, last one, Phoenix Schultz.
have any parents in the audience, please stand and be recognized. Okay, next we have our GHS Senior Volleyball Academic All-State presented by Coach Shahan and Coach Moore.
Hello. Good evening. Thank you guys so much for having us. We had a great volleyball season this year. We finished with a winning record, got third in district, made playoffs, and we hit a lot of career milestones. So we had a lot to celebrate. But tonight, I have the privilege of honoring the students who made the Academic All-State team. Academic All-State is awarded to seniors who meet the rigorous student-athlete qualifications. This is an award that shows the determination and strive for excellence in the classroom as well as on the court. To be recognized at the state level and receive an All-State honor is the most prestigious award that I believe that you could get. I'm very proud of our student athletes on our team that meet the following requirements as set by the UIL and the TGCA coaching organization. Good citizenship, finish the senior season in good standing, and have a cumulative GPA from grades 9 through 11 of 94 or better. This award goes to Miss Blakely Bleeker, Addie Cowling, Audrey Greiner, Allie McCabe, and Lily McCall, but she couldn't be here tonight.
If we have any parents in the audience, please stand and be recognized.
Is that what they did?
Okay, next on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
Yes, hello, and thank you, those of you that are still in the room here. Got a couple of great announcements. First one is that, and I'm going to read it so I don't miss any details. The Granbury Marine Corps JROTC Rifle Team secured their 8th consecutive Marine Corps Service Championship. Granbury has made history as the only team in the MCJROTC history to achieve 8 consecutive championships, cementing the program's reputation as the most dominant in the nation. So what an accomplishment. Recognize some of those individuals later. We also have our swim team that has 5 qualifiers. They're going to state this weekend, and so we're really excited about that. Yeah, let's go ahead. We are wrapping up our 4th 6 weeks of our school year and finishing benchmarks, and so lots of great decisions are going to be made based on that data. So teachers will use that information to intervene and provide support for our students before the big state testing. As always, I want to give a public shout out to the people that have helped during our absences across the flu season, and so we did a great job of being flexible and teachers supporting one another. So once again, thank you to those leaders and campus leaders and staff who were flexible. 2 announcements, and then I'll end my report. We do have a coffee with the CFO that's coming up Tuesday, March 25th at 9 o'clock. It's a great way to have a casual conversation, to sit down and ask questions and really learn about school finance. And so it'll be our 2nd session. We're excited for Emmett to lead that session. And then a new thing that we're adding March 3rd will be a community engagement session. I will lead that session at 5 o'clock. I will give you some information and we can discuss feedback. It'll be interactive. You'll be able to give us some information. I'll ask lots of great questions and and seek your feedback. And then after that, about 5:30, we'll go into the public comments session where you will be able to sign up like you've done in the past to speak on items that you want to give feedback on that are not necessarily associated with the board agenda. So that's happening on March 3rd, beginning at 5 o'clock. And hopefully you'll see some more information on that coming soon. And that's it for the superintendent report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Borowski. Okay, now we have our demographics report by Zonda Education.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Madam Board President Gore, members of the board, Dr. Morosky, very good to see you. Happy to be here with you tonight and kind of talk through the demographic report and go over just a few numbers with you this evening. So with that said, I'll kind of ramp things up here. I think I'm going to ramp things up. There we go. Briefly, I'll kind of go over the demographic snapshot. So we do an analysis of what's happening in the overall district. You can see that you have approximately about 64,000 residents within the district. That breaks down to about 26,000 households. That's an average size of that 2.43 residents per household. Median age is about 48. You can also see kind of a general breakdown of the generations that are there in the middle of the page. Again, your baby boomer generation is the largest percentage of your overall population at that 28%. We also want to always track what's happening with not only your millennial generation, because that is your families currently right now within the district, what that percentage is, but also evaluating what the numbers are related to your Gen Z, because in the next 10, 15 years, that percentage is going to continue to grow and be your future percentage of families that are going to be there. Overall, when we look at the economic picture, things have been very, very strong. We have seen a little bit of an uptick related to the unemployment rate, not necessarily just locally, but we've also seen that at the state level as well as at the national level. That has provided the Federal Reserve in the fall to begin evaluating cuts to the federal funds rate. We did see, related to the mortgage market, really from the fall of 23 through just about the fall of 24, the mortgage market had anticipated those cuts coming. They did not respond well when the cuts actually took place. By the time we got to the September, October timeframe, those rates have gone back up in that timeframe. But we do anticipate, related to the overall market, related to markets, and those interest rates being fairly level as we kind of go through the next 6 to 12 months. Related to just jobs and activity, we do see that there's been a data center that's been added that's going to continue to be built out and provide some employment growth in the area. And then just a little further out, we do see a continuation of the Amazon plants being built about 30 minutes out in Cleveland where we see that. We always want to track the overall region of what's happening in the overall job market. We see that the number of commuters that are within Granbury, there's about 13 to 15% of those commuters that typically will drive anywhere from 7 to 8 hours weekly to and from back from work. You'll also see just kind of an overall residential picture. So we're going to talk about kind of what's happening with the overall housing market. You'll see that Dallas-Fort Worth is still the largest housing starting market in the entire country. You'll also see, when you hear about what's happening in the state of Texas related to growth and development, you'll also see that we have the 4 largest housing markets in the entire country. So when you're talking about Dallas-Fort Worth, San Antonio, Austin, all of those, as in Houston, are all in that top 4 out of 6 in the entire country related to housing activity. You can also see when we evaluate those home starts and closings within the overall area, and we highlight specifically the closest region, Dallas-Fort Worth, we are starting to finally see things kind of trend. I hesitate to say normal because we've been had very interesting times the last several years related to the housing market, both on the supply side of things, but also some challenges on closings. And so we do see that we finally are starting to level out related to supply as well as the ability to close in this market. When we look at what's happening related to sales, specifically in the Granbury ISD market, you can see the significant numbers that we saw back in the 2021, even in 2022 timeframe. And again, that was at that historic low interest rate market. What we've seen over the last several years is with that increase in interest rates, as well as some of those price points for housing increasing, that has complicated the number of sales and closings that we've seen within the region. Again, falling just about to that halfway point related to home sales from where it was in the 2021 timeframe. When you look at what we anticipate most likely will be the bottom of the housing market for the district in that 2023 timeframe last year, that close to 1,700 home sales. And then you'll see also the home prices, whether it be new home prices that have gone up year over year for many years. We do see this current year, or this past year, that some of those numbers have gone down just a little bit. We have seen kind of a combination of a little bit of softening in the market related to those construction materials, but we were also seeing that some of the new housing developments that are coming online have a little different, maybe a little different square footage, and those price points are down a little bit from where they are and have been in several of the markets in the district. So with that said, you'll also see that your existing homes have continued to go up year over year over the last several years. Again, part of that's just tied to not a significant amount of supply. A lot of folks have been locked in at that lower rate and are happy with those numbers and know right now if they were to look to move, that might complicate their numbers in the future. So that's a big factor in what we're seeing here. We'll get into a little bit of the building subdivisions that are out there. So we'll reference a number that we reference as 30 active building subdivisions. These are those subdivisions that are in the district that have roads and utilities and have lots that are ready to be built on. We'll also identify those in yellow that we've identified that there are about 16 futures that are out there, and those are conceptual, potentially have been platted. We know that they're out there and some numbers are going to be out there in the future. Right now they don't have significant roads or utilities, so that's the definition between those active and futures for us. You'll also see kind of in the red outlines are those that potentially are those futures or existing developments that have roads and utilities currently going on right now. So we do anticipate lots coming on in the next 6 months to a year in those areas. So we'll dive into each one of those in a little bit more detail. Brookside, a development that is 876 total lots. Within that, a large percentage of that is futures. They do have that first phase that is in development stage right now, about 150 vacant developed lots that are going to be able to be delivered. They're just on the front end of starting to build some of those homes. So again, about 6 homes currently being built right now, and they will have a multifamily component that will be a part of that overall development in the future. And again, this is LGI homes. We would anticipate a fairly significant number of homes being built in this area in the next year to 2 years.
May I ask a question on that one?
Yes.
Many of these you gave us a student yield on what you thought based on the size of the home and the price, and you did that on Brookside. Do you have
Yes.
an idea of what it might be?
We typically, until we start to see some student numbers start to come in and those homes be developed, we won't reference a yield specifically.
Okay.
I can reference that when we've looked at these in the past, we've kind of got a historic yield that we can reference where we think it could be in some range somewhere between 0.4 and 0.6 is our typical traditional range that we reference. But we also want to evaluate what's happening in those developments, get an idea of price point as well as kind of the analytics of what's happening within those communities to be able to figure out what the true yield may be moving forward in those developments. We've got Crescent Estates that has 304 total lots there. Again, 192 vacant developed lots that we see there. We showed 7 homes that were under construction this fall. They do have 55 inventory homes. So right now they have a number of homes ready to be moved into. So we could, without even a lot of additional housing activity taking place in there, we could see a number of families move into that area within a fairly short period of time with the amount of homes that are ready to be sold in that area. Again, very early on, and they've got 14 students that are currently in there right now. And again, we'll reference that yield of 0.298. Just because I'll reference yield, and we've saying that many, many times over, that really ties to the number of students that will reside within a certain number of homes. So 0.3 is really 3 students for every 10 homes is how we're referencing that. You'll also see kind of in the Oakwoods elementary zone area, you'll see that we've got the Cougar Mountain Estates, 172 total lots that are there, have the majority of the roads and infrastructure that are currently there right now. Just to the south of that is the Terrazzo Hills that has 37 total lots, a little bit of activity taking place currently right now in that. That's in the Acton elementary zone. And then Petite Hill has 337 total lots that are there, 20 completed homes there right now, and again, higher price points. And so whenever we see some of these higher price points, we are going to see a significantly lower yield, most likely in those areas, and if we take that into account. You'll also see Saratoga that has been in a development that's been in the district for quite some time. It has 473 total lots there. It's got 110 future lots, and they do have 200 vacant developed lots that are ready to be built on. You can see a lot of dirt work, lots, and activity that have been taking place in that general area. And then just to the east of that is Legacy Ranch that has 626 total lots identified for mixed use. That's going to have townhomes in that development currently right now. It was platted about a year ago this fall, so still anticipate those kind of off into the future. But we want to make sure we account for those in our overall number. Acton also has Stewart Ranch. This has been a development that's been there for a long time. It's just about finished out, or not finished out. But you can see that there's one home that's currently in construction, but they do have some of those roads and utilities that have finished that area. So they've got those utilities ready to go, so it should be ready to be built on in the near future. And then speaking of futures, kind of the split between Oakwoods and Acton is the Crescent Crossroads that has conceptually referenced about 1,200 total lots. So that is significant. Right now in discussions with them, they referenced that ultimately would be a 10-year build out. So we would project out when that does start, and it's still some time before that most likely will begin, that we will anticipate generally how many lots may be coming in per year once that begins.
I have a question about that one. Is there an estimated start date for when they do break ground, or is it completely unknown right now?
I still would say that's in an unknown. We have so many lots that are being prepared to be built on right now, so I would anticipate that they would see some of those other developments finish out and be built through before they start to look to develop those into the future. We'll look at some small ones again. Oakwoods. This has Cardinal Woods has 40 total homes within that. We show about 40 vacant developed lots that are ready to be built on. So again, anticipating a home size somewhere between 1,600 and 2,000, referencing that smaller square footage total than what we've seen in the past for other areas. An established development that's been there for many years is at Abe's Landing. 462 total lots that are there, but they are preparing for 90 futures. They do have 60 vacant developed lots still to be built on there. And when we do look at this, and I would say this is going to tie into some of the conversation we have about where we're at with forecasts and numbers. We looked at when we geocoded the student numbers within Abe's Landing. We knew what it was, which was closer to a 0.3, 0.32 previously in our reports, and now we're seeing that our yields in that development are closer to that 0.185. So again, seeing a lower yield in that area than what we've seen in the last several years. Kind of in the Navy-Bacchus zone, you can see El Dorado has 121 total lots in that, all futures, but you can see the roads being cut in, the lots being prepared. And then just to the south of that is Bella Vista that has 65 total lots that are there in a similar stage to bringing on homes in the near future. And then you'll also see in the Bonner Elementary Zone a development referenced as the Mortgage Storage Edition. It is right next to mortgage storage. It has 137 total lots that are there. They do have a few of those homes that are currently under construction right now. Again, 127 vacant development lots that are part of that. And right now we're anticipating a price point for those somewhere in that $400,000 range. And then we also have Sandstone Estates in Bonner. This is 105 total lots that are part of that overall development. Again, significant phase has already been built by D.R. Horton. 46 vacant developed lots left to be built on currently right now. We see in that area, again, 21 Granbury ISD students that currently reside in that based off of our fall geocode, and that was a 0.368. We'll also evaluate multifamily. Dulce Vita Senior Living is currently under construction right now. That's not, it's again, if they are identified as senior living, we do not account for those in any way, shape, or form for future forecasts related to numbers for enrollment. But we do always want to acknowledge that those developments exist just so that the community knows that we're accounting for, to know that those are what those developments are and where that is in relation to where our forecast for the year will be. So there are about 1,000 future multifamily units that are in various stages of planning, again, into the near future. And then when we look at the multifamily yield related to the number of units that are out there in the overall district, we see that there are about 261 students that are residing in almost 1,900 units across the district. And so that is a fairly low yield. We see that's a yield of about 1.139. Many times over in many districts, we see somewhere in the range of 0.2 to 0.25 is what we typically see in multifamily. Again, depending on certain developments, there can also be subsidy housing and those kind of things that create a much more significant yield, but we don't have anything remotely close to that in anything we're evaluating here. And then we'll look at transfers. As always, that can be a significant factor. One of the things is people look at the enrollment numbers. They can account for how many students are transferring into the district. You can see that that has ranged anywhere from 5 to 6 years out, meaning anywhere from 40 to 50 students to currently 78 students this past year. But many people, whenever we're looking at the overall enrollment numbers, we're talking 566 students that actually transfer outside, that live physically in the district, that go and attend an adjacent school district And then there are some, I don't want to say oddities, but there's things that I think are important to emphasize. You'll see that Hallsville ISD, there on that has increased the number of students they've had enrolled in that area. Hallsville is nowhere close to here. It's more out towards East Texas, but it is. But they have an online program, and so we see not only in Hallsville on the east side of Texas, but we also have Fort Stockton. It's on the west side that have very small school districts. When you think about the number of students that actually are physically in the buildings, but they do have online programs. So when we evaluate what's happening with our percentages and numbers that we see related to homeschooling, we know that there are percentages that are increasing because even though they are going through a public education system related to their online learning, it's a higher percentage than what we've seen over the last several years. So they would reference themselves most likely as homeschooled because they are doing that online content. So we do take a look at kind of where we're at with our current enrollment numbers. And you can see that 82% or 82 students that currently reside outside the district that are transferred in. So very close in line with where our numbers have been the last several years. Again, that's a very small amount, approximately 1% of the overall number of students that are transferring in. So we typically see for many districts a low total would be somewhere in the range of 2.5% to 4%. There are districts that are out there that have a significant percentage of transfer in to the district, and that number can range from anywhere from 12 all the way up to, for smaller districts, as much as 18%. So again, evaluating enrollment and figuring out if they have capacity at their classrooms and needing staff. Sometimes they will allow a greater number of students come in from out of district. So we do also evaluate birth rates. So you'll see there on slide 25 a reference to the number of births in the area. You will see that there is a fairly close ratio correlated to those birth rates to how many kindergarten students that you have. And so we try to, it gives us an idea. It's, for many years ago, I had no earthly idea how we would ever figure out how we would know how many kindergarten students were coming in from one year to the next. And so when we went through this, they shared the analysis with me that it really ties into understanding where that is and looking at it at the track record of what that ratio has been over the last several years to be able to identify a general number that we think it should be. You'll see kind of in those outer years, as we get into 28, 29, we've talked about many of those developments that are going to be bringing in families, and there'll be some kindergarten students that'll be a part of that. So that brings that kindergarten number up a little bit from where it would be just based off of the birth rate numbers that you would have by year. So then we'll look at kind of where we've been the last several years. You can see as we were going through recovering from the challenging 2021 year, the district had significant growth of about 3.5% in the 21-22 school year. 22-23 was 222 student growth. And then in 23-24, we didn't see the growth that we would have anticipated. Based off of the housing availability and what we had shared with builders as far as the progress they had anticipated having, evaluating housing sales from the last few years, we do put those projections together to help try to figure out what those forecasts are going to be. And we did have a fairly significant drop. And I say drop, it just leveled from that 23-24 year to 24-25. So we do have to acknowledge the fact that we were significantly lower than where we would have projected to be based off of our forecasting information that we previously had. I will say that we do want to always evaluate kind of those grade groups within the overall enrollment picture. And so you'll see that your largest grade group that you've got is at that third grade level. And so typically, if you have one of your larger grade groups in your secondary campuses, at your high school campuses, then that kind of tells us that we could potentially start to level off related to future enrollment, because you may find yourself starting to graduate out some of your larger classes than your kindergarten classes, which points to the fact that you may be leveling out and coming back down. Now, what I will say is you're seeing in the last few years, the majority of your first or your top two is in that elementary level. So again, always want to say that we would anticipate, related to a number of factors, but again, seeing that some of your largest grade groups are the third grade and sixth grade levels, that we still see significant class growth in the near future. And then I would just say that your largest year-over-year cohort increases were, when you look at year-over-year, third, fourth, fifth, and your ninth grades all had, from their second grade class to the third grade, had a good number of students added to the overall enrollment picture. So then we'll look at that, take all of those things into account. You'll see that we've referenced updated 10-year projection of where the numbers are. We would anticipate growth moving forward as we get into next year. We anticipate approximately 83 new students coming into the district. Again, when you take into consideration those lots that we're seeing right now, the amount of activity that are taking place, we would see that growth should start to pick back up. I don't know that I would even say that we're trying to be aggressive related to our projections. When you take into consideration where we were percentage-wise a couple of years ago, but we know by the number of lots that are being put together and the builders that are working in those developments, that the number of homes that they're going to be building is going to be significant compared to some of the more local, smaller builders that we've seen the last few years. And then this does kind of highlight each one of those campuses. And you'll see what those campus enrollment pictures look like over the next several years. Again, you'll see Acton Elementary with the developments that are there, the number of future students that are anticipated at that campus. And then you'll also see that at Oakwoods Elementary, as well as kind of often in greater future related to Mambrino Elementary, could potentially start to see some challenges related to its capacity down the road. But we would see that Acton and Oakwoods is really going to be the areas that are going to have the most challenge related to the amount of development that's going to be taking place in the number of families that are most likely going to be moving into the district in that region. And then you'll also see what that potentially does with Acton Middle School, with those future enrollment forecasts, and then ultimately what that does as it moves up and over into the Granbury High School enrollment pictures. So with that said,
Could you go back?
yes.
Sorry. On the total capacity for high school, 2,500 for Granbury High School, 73 for Stars Accelerated, but the total high school is 3,198. Could you explain to me how you got that number?
The original capacities that were referenced?
Under the capacity column for Granbury High School and Stars Accelerated.
I would say we may be going off of capacities that have been shared with us by the district.
Right, but 2,573 don't equal 3,198, so I'm confused as to what that high school total is.
That should be, that may be a carryover, so that should be correct.
Okay, thank you.
So in other words, we give you these capacity numbers?
Yes.
Okay, so we don't know if it's fire code or the number of classrooms?
Traditionally, the district's already had the architect come through and they'll do an analysis on the number of classrooms, how many students potentially could be in those, and they'll identify a capacity, and those can be sometimes broken down into what sometimes is referenced as maximum capacity, which means that you have as many kids as you could possibly hold within each one of those classrooms, or most likely it's referenced to functional capacity that allows for some degree of flexibility. So many districts will reference that as somewhere between 80% and 85% of what the overall maximum capacity of the campus could be.
Thank you.
So again, just in summary, there'll be, we did see overall a slight uptick in the overall home starts and home sales in the district really in this past year. Again, quite a few active building subdivisions that have close to about 1,600 lots that are available to build on currently right now. You do have several futures that are out there, and if you add all of those futures, we wouldn't necessarily anticipate that all being done within the next 10 years, but you do have over 8,000 future lots that are out there to be built on, or would be conceptually built on over the next several years. We do evaluate kind of where we're at with that yield, and again, we've got a little bit more conservative with the overall projections that we've provided for the district, anticipating somewhere in that ballpark of about 8,900 students by the time you get to the 29-30 time frame, about 5 years out, and then think that we still will be in that range of somewhere around 10,000 students when we look at that 10-year picture. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, I'll shoot. Will you take feedback, Brian, please, to slide 2? So on this one, I just did some quick analysis. Oh, you had it for a second.
Oh, you're going, all right, you run with it. Yeah, happy to have someone else run with it.
Yeah, so I did some quick analysis on this one where along the top you have 63,992 and those numbers across there. I looked at just our neighboring Fort Worth, for example, because I could find their information easily. But their average household size is 2.76, so we're pretty close on that 2.43. Median age is interesting. Theirs is 33.2, whereas we're much higher at 48.2 median age, which I think speaks to our having school-age children amongst older adults. Median household income, so we have higher income. I think that goes with age as well. 77,000 was their number compared to our almost 82,000. But the median home value was interestingly almost the same, 343,000 versus 341 by comparison. But when I did the math against in the center of your screen there, where you showed the population by generation, next door in Fort Worth, where the greatest generation for your G, Fort Worth shows 3.8 there, where we have 7.8. We have a much older population. That is true as well for baby boomers. They show 16 even, and we have 28. And Gen X, 18, they have 19, so they come up a little more on that. But for Granbury, the sum of those is 54.2% of Granbury residents are in those first 3 generations there, as opposed to Fort Worth, they only have 38, so 60, almost 62% of people in Fort Worth are much younger than the generations that we have here, and I think that speaks to the number of children per household as well, because we have such a large retirement community coming here to retire.
Yes.
You better not be calling Gen X retirement.
Fair enough. I'm in there too. So I just want to speak to that for a second and know that you factor those things into your calculus. I saw some of the questions that I had were answered along the way with, for example, your student yield, and some of those was relatively low in several of them. I'm going to take you now, Brian, please, to slide 28. Is the forecast by campus. So well, let me show you that. So I can account for that 3198 in the first column. I think that's hard coded in, that's typed in, that's not a sum. Because it definitely doesn't add up, which either there's hidden rows in there, which is suspect, or that's not a calculated field, it's just somebody typed it in hard coded. So the difference there is 625.
Sure.
And 625 is the previous capacity of Crossland School, which you're standing in Crossland School, has been repurposed.
There we go.
And so I think that's what's going on there, and that's the reason for that number. And then that also carries down then to the next line, where your number is 98, not your number, I guess the number we supplied to you, but the number in that first column, the grand total in the far left column is 9898, and that real number is 9273 for total capacity. The same 625 is accounted for there, so I think that's your difference. Now, I'm only in the first column, sorry. I don't want to get everyone all leery-eyed because I'm talking about a series of numbers, but jump for me, Ryan, please, to that, the other, yes, please. So this is a little later in our presentation today. Our CFO will present this statement, but it shows student enrollment at the beginning of February. So the numbers that you have are from the October report, enrollment report.
That's correct.
Yeah, so that now is updated to 7909 as opposed to 7948. So it's definitely down from that number. It's up from last year by 8, but only if you count. It looks significantly down from the previous year if you use 7934 the prior year, but the prior year that we showed here on Emmett's report is 7901, so it's plus 8 for this year, but it's minus 53 for last year, and overall from the prior year. So those were interesting to me. So I wondered from you, please, does that calculus carry forward, all things being equal, cascades to the ensuing years?
A couple of questions I would ask. Sometimes we do have a little bit of a drop from the fall to the spring. Sometimes we have early graduation, so sometimes that we have a few students that'll fall in that category. So that sometimes factors into those numbers.
Yeah.
And so that's a part of it. But we can see minor fluctuations. We typically will try to evaluate the snapshot data from the state at October, so that we try to get things as apples to apples as possible. So even though there will be a degree of fluctuation throughout the entire year, we want to evaluate what's happened related to previous growth and try to evaluate that October number as best we can, because that helps us be able to identify that yield as accurately as possible.
That's the same shot year over year, October.
That is correct.
So that you're, yep, okay, I get that, appreciate that, thank you. I have more for you, hold on. I'm sorry. So one of my just kind of overall questions, I don't know that I have a reference for this. I produced some slides of my own to compare the previous forecast to the current forecast. The new forecast is a lot more flat, a lot more conservative, if you will, that forecast is different. I don't know what went into that calculus or how you may have measured differently this time than last time, but I think it's important to note that this board has to make multi-million-dollar decisions based on what's in this report. And just a couple of things, like for example, there's a heat map, that's page 24, please, Brian, there's a heat map. So for example, we were making decisions a year ago where we were looking at all of our new growth was happening on the north and east side of the lake. And as it turns out from that heat map, it looks like more of it is then on the west, south and west side of the lake.
So this isn't necessarily a heat map. This is actually a student
Population.
This is your student enrollment number. So that's a dot map of where your current student enrollment is.
Yeah, thank
today.
you. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
Just the terminology. I'm with you though. I'm on the same page. But we see that differently now than we were anticipating. Madam President, thank you for pointing that out. I think that's really the case, that we almost built a school where it turns out we probably didn't need it. So that was curious as well. And it goes to what I was saying about we're making big decisions with lots of money that we could otherwise sure we could find other things to do with it.
I think a lot of the economy stuff factored into the slowing of the growth and then the moratorium too. There's a lot of factors that came into play with what they were projecting and what actually happened with what happened with the housing market and interest rates and the economy. It changed the landscape of everything. So I'm glad we have an updated report.
Me too. So then I wanted to ask you the comparison to the report that we had, the previous report, and that difference. And I don't know that your model changed or just you saw new.
No, I would say candidly, our model did change. Part of that does factor into, if you look at what we're able to do, is we do take the current data that we have, and that helps be able to project out what our future model is going to look like. And so when we look at what the numbers look like related to what our mortgage rates were, the pace of activity that we saw builders building at the time that we had in that 21-22 timeframe, those numbers were all north of where they've been the last few years. So we have seen kind of a retraction of the amount of activity that happened related to housing, but we also see preparation from developers related to the number of housing developments that are coming in. So if you look back to some of the older reports that we have, they're referencing smaller number of active building subdivisions, and so we may have had somewhere in the range of anywhere from 16 to 20 active building subdivisions. Right now, as I'm sharing with you today, we're looking at 30. So that the last few years has caused us to be a little bit more conservative about what we're referencing for the amount of activity that would be taking place. So from that standpoint, the next few years, we're a little bit more conservative in our overall projections. And then the biggest factor that we look at is that yield. So evaluating what the current yield is in each one of those developments and taking that number and moving that forward. For some of these developments that we had several years ago, those yields were higher. So when we projected out what that forecast was going to be in those individual areas, it was at a higher number than what we currently have. So that's partly why you're going to see a little bit of a more conservative model currently than what we had the last few years.
Okay, thank you for that. One of the other things that I did in my graph, so this, you can't see it, I know you can't, but the blue is the previous projection, and you can see that mark going up. This is just one school, by the way. I did a campus by campus to show that. But I also have a yellow bar in here that marks the actuals over the course of the past 4 years since the previous report. And so do you take that into account also? Is that factored into where the projections were versus what the actuals were?
I mean, I don't know that I would reference that it's more about knowing that if those numbers and those yields and those averages didn't come in as we anticipated, then those yields and all those things drop down a little bit. So we take that new yield and those new numbers forward.
You just overall improved the model.
That is correct.
Yep, all right, I appreciate that. So I say I appreciate that. I mean to open by saying I don't envy the job you have. I know there's a lot that goes into that. Some of the questions that we have are tougher than others. So I asked. I think this made its way to you last week on Friday. I asked him some questions. That was me about just that your company. I don't mean to say you. I never mean to say you.
That's okay.
But the company caters to education.
We have a number of clients in education, but we also work with municipalities. We work with water districts. So we work with a number of entities that are evaluating growth.
Okay, so
growth or population.
So the reason why I ask that question is because we can get demographics reports from TechStock, and they're always wanting to expand highways, and they have a bias toward expanding highways. And so do we have a bias toward expanding schools and school districts and adding buildings? so then the next question kind of points to that, then how often do the demographics reports not show an immediate, within the next 5 years or so, need for additional buildings?
So I would say if I was just to reference a general percentage, and these are very, very general, many of the districts that we work with may be smaller districts that see a large development starting to come into the area. They'll reach out and say, what is this going to look like for us over the next 5 to 10 years? So we'll meet with districts to evaluate new activity that's happening in their area to be able to help them identify if there are going to be some challenges. One of the biggest things is to identify for a district what are your existing capacities so that you know how much you can accommodate. And then we'll evaluate, what those projections potentially will mean for that district in the next 5 to 10 years. I would say many districts that we meet with, we can have the conversation with them to share, you have this much capacity, we anticipate this much housing activity taking place over the next 5 to 10 years. In many ways, in many conversations that we have, we can say, look, you have about a 3 to 4 year window in which you can accommodate all the growth that you currently have right now with the existing buildings that you have. Once you get beyond 4 to 5 years with the anticipated housing activity, you need to be prepared for additional classrooms because you're going to need to bring on additional space. And so what that means for them, we typically will let them work with someone else to evaluate what they're going to need related to building needs. But we will try to put together a projection so they know what they can anticipate as far as families moving into the area and what that potentially could look like for enrollment.
And so in fairness to the company, your company, the school districts or municipalities or anyone else, by the time they engage you, they're already seeing some of that, and so it would tend to skew those numbers forward.
In many cases, they're going to try to find out really what their timelines are, is what they're trying to get to. So there is some growth to that. We also work with school districts that are evaluating enrollment challenges. So there'll be districts that their districts are reaching a level of maturity and they want to know how many students do we anticipate losing over the next 5 to 10 years. And so we also work with districts on evaluating those models so that they can have an idea of what that's going to look like for them.
So I also asked the question, and I don't know that you quite picked it up in any of the slides that you presented, and I don't think I've asked it in another way that you've answered this yet. But is there a percentage that you can tell us about how many of them project a downturn in population? The reason why I ask is because now we have so many school districts around Texas that are seeing that, and so either they're adopting interesting and creative programs to say, hey, all you surrounding communities can start coming into our school. There's one called Access Frisco right now that's interesting, and they're trying to bring in everybody from Little Elm and Plano and Allen and McKinney to y'all come to our schools.
Right.
And so I see that going on so that they don't have to close schools. And then the other ones that are, San Antonio alone is closing a dozen campuses. We just heard in the past week that they're looking at 26 to close in Fort Worth. That's significant. So I don't know why we're any different. I mean, I see that your projections are there, but I want to know what differentiates them.
Yeah, the challenge is you do see for some of those districts, they've reached a certain level of build out, so they are somewhat mature and they don't have as many new buildings, new housing developments within those areas in many ways. Similar to the Fort Worth, Dallas-Fort Worth region, if you looked at a heat map, kind of in that center core is really where most of the areas have started to see falling enrollment, and you have folks that are moving into the area, but they're moving in the outer areas where the growth is.
They've reached density and their kids are growing up and moving out of them, but they stay there with them.
Yes. And so it's a combination of that. I would also share with you that in many ways, some of the enrollment and those numbers are still there, but they're dealing with competition that they didn't have 15, 20 years ago. So in many ways, you've got a certain number of students that are still in those areas, but they've got charters and other options that are out there now. So some of that enrollment is dropping because of that.
That's right. So that scares me more than the one before, where I was saying that there's a certain density and that now you're not populating those areas with younger kids because they're already populated and they've grown up and out. But that one is more concerning that they're bleeding off school-age children to those alternatives. And so then now the question is going to be to you, do you have a factor for that in your calculus?
So I will say that does play into the lower yield analysis that we do, because we do anticipate that is part of the factor, that we do have some students and children that are in the district that, again, similar to what we referenced on the transfers out, that aren't accounted for in the current enrollment within Granbury ISD. We're still getting better at analyzing that part of it. So I would not tell you that we have a specific percentage that we've got accounted for that yet, because as many districts are evaluating that currently right now, and as the state legislature is evaluating that right now, all we have, the best data we have is the current data we have and the historical data we have. And unfortunately, related to, we have some charter data that we can track. And so that charter data is incorporated into it. But what I would say is the factor that we're struggling with, that we'll continue to struggle with until we get a better handle on what those numbers look like in the next year or two, because of how those numbers have advanced in the last few years, is really homeschooling.
It's just a bunch of unknown, right? I mean, you can't project it. There's not enough historical data.
We need more historical data. Those percentages have been rather small the last several years, but we know that they're increasing, and so we're seeing that. We've seen that just in the last, really in the last 2 years, we've seen significant growth in those numbers. So.
All right, I'm going to shift gears on you a little bit. So maybe even just a little bit of anecdotal. So in my business in IT outsourcing, when we would take on a new client and bring them into our IT outsourcing solutions, I would always go buy stock in those other companies because, one, I think they're making good decisions to come to my company, let us outsource for them, and two, I want to be personally invested in their success. Right? So it kind of makes me part of it. I own the company, and I want them to do well, and so it makes me and me to drive my team to also perform better. And so in the same way, then, I want to ask you, does Zonda have investment in building school building architects or school building contractor builders? Any of that?
No, not in any way, shape, or form. Our group, our focus is all related to residential development and data. That's really what we focus on, is evaluating data. No services related to builders, certainly, but no connection specific to the housing industry.
You understand the question? I want to know if we're skewed a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. So then, also I'm interested to know if there's any commonality in board members, any Zonda board members who are also members of the boards of, especially the, let's say, the big three. None of that even.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Thank you for your questions, and I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. I don't know if you said it when you...
I apologize. Hudson Huff.
I'm sorry, Hudson?
Hudson Huff.
Thank you for all the great information. I appreciate it, and thank you for asking those questions. I think it's good practice to get those questions out and get the information out there for the public, so thank you for that. Does anybody else have any more questions?
I have a quick question. If you go back to slide 27 on the 10-year forecast by grade level, it doesn't show very well on the slide, but everything that's above the yellow line or the orange line is historical data, and everything that's in blue would be considered like future best guess data or demographics.
Our forecast. Yes, sir.
Okay. So as you read diagonally down through where, say, just below the 9th grade under the orange level, there's a number 672. That freshman class would go from 672 to 629 to 559 to 515. Those numbers range anywhere from like 140 difference between the freshman and senior year to over 200 as it goes further down. How do y'all come up with those those forecasts like that are
So the
different.
8th grade class to the 9th grade class, is that?
Yeah, 9th to 10th, 10th to 11th, 11th to 12th.
So
you
9th
have
to
read
10th.
diagonally.
Our 9th to 10th, typically, we have a greater number of 9th graders than 10th graders in that fall October number, because I don't want to mess this up. It's typically you have freshmores. So you'll have the sophomores that don't quite have all the credits for their sophomore class rating. They are sophomores, but they're freshmen. So they're just by the PEAMS data, they're freshmen. So you'll have that larger 9th grade class in a smaller 10th grade class because of that.
But it's not the same. It's not an equal forecast as you go down. Is it a percentage that you anticipate?
It typically would be a cohort change, yes. It's a typical, it's going to be an average.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on, and without objection from the board, we're going to remove item 11B from the consent agenda. Hearing no objection, let the record show item 11B has been removed from the consent agenda. If anyone did sign up to speak on that item, I apologize, it's been removed from the agenda, so there will be no public comments on that item. As far as this board is concerned, there is no censured board member up here. We've all moved past this. The only way to heal a wound is to stop picking it. This chapter's closed. To better serve our community and the students of this district, we are all closing this chapter and moving on. And now we will continue with the public comments. Our Mayor, Jim Jarratt, has signed up to speak on the audit engagement.
Because the censure's gone.
Thank you, Superintendent Barowski and the board. Appreciate the time to speak. I'm speaking about the upcoming conversation that will be held on about the Snow Garrett Williams audit. And I come to request that you exercise your fiduciary duty and request a request for qualifications or a request for proposal. I don't know which one you're obligated to do, which is ever required by the state. But I request that Snow, Garrett, and Williams, the current auditor and auditor for the past 20 years, not be allowed to enter a bid. And here's my reasoning. This is we're basically a customer because we are one of the taxing entities, the governing bodies of the appraisal district. The appraisal district had Snow, Williams, and Garrett up until this past year. The 2023 audit was done by another firm. And it is good business practice to change auditors at least every 5 years. S&W has been GISD auditor for over 20 years. S&W was the auditor of record for the Hood Central Appraisal District for over 20 years until the HCAT put out an RFP for a competitive bid. The bids came in 30 to 50% lower than the bid that came in from S&W. Excuse me. An analysis of several neighboring schools, some of who use other auditing firms and some who use S&W, continue to show that there is an opportunity for the GISD to save 25 to 50%. Examples: Stephenville uses S&W at $64,000, $100 a year. Aledo uses P&A, or I have their materials here. Anyway, they're at $46,800. Cleveland uses the same ones. They're at $30,800. And the HCAT had a similar experience when they went with the new auditor. Also, on the last audit that S&W performed for the HCAT, they included in the audit a statement that amendments to the original 2022 budget were related to additions to capital outlay for a new building. I'd like to read you a little bit of the tax code, which is the appraisal district is responsible for. So the board may amend the approved budget at any time, but the secretary of the board must deliver a written copy of a proposed amendment to the presiding officer of the governing body of each taxing unit participating in the district not later than the 30th day before the date the board acts on it. That's never happened. They never happened. I called S&W. They said you have to talk to the HCAT. I talked to the HCAT. They said put in a public information request. I put in the request. There was no amendments. They violated the tax code. The S&W audit, before the new auditors could even get into it, they had to restate the results. $250,000 improvement in assets, $475,000 improvement in liabilities.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, next up to speak is Monica Brown, speaking on the demographics report and budget amendments, or the budget.
I also put down public comments since it's on the agenda as well. 11F is budget amendments, and I'm just going to say it now. I'm going to say it all year long. The community would like to see you put no new revenue tax rate in. We'd like to see a forensic audit of Hood Council Appraisal District, and do not accept another bloated budget from HCAD or excuses related to a forensic audit, though I do think that's what you're going to do. These demographic reports, that's the second one I'm talking about, leads the community to distrust you because you keep pushing ideas based on false or misleading information. Even tonight, Crossland is included. How much longer are you going to do that? That was identified last year. So I don't understand why we keep putting 600 plus people in a building that's not even housing students. So I want to know, in the future, we make sure that our people who are giving us projections have accurate data, and who's the one giving them Crosslands every time over and over again. So you've not done your homework to warrant the whipping this community keeps going through trying to handle their money responsibly. Forecast is an estimate and a projection, but not a fact. Common people see the careless and inconsiderate bond proposals, $200,000 bathrooms for staff, out of order. And the real issue is this board and administration use their time and energy to attempt to pass an unneeded bond when their focus should be on educating the children, reading scores and math scores, looking into Bluebonnet, just getting Morath's samples he said he would send if you just inquire. I was told by this superintendent we aren't inquiring. Why not? He's going to send free samples of Bluebonnet, ELAR. But our group is overwhelmed in just adding math in. But I think we have better teachers than that. I think they can do both. And I think we should bring that in and evaluate it if the state of Texas is offering it to you to at least look at it. Have you heard the newest students are graduating and turning around and suing public schools because they cannot read and they cannot calculate? So when's that going to happen in Granbury? Smug is the word. Disingenuous is the word. The auditors you're using are pitting families against teachers, causing disruption in our community. Let them go and get some that aren't disingenuous or who are basing the false information from our staff. Imagine what school choice will do, what lower birth rates will do, what removing illegals will do. Imagine what is happening when you have caused concerned parents to part ways and find their own educational solutions despite pouring their hard-earned money into what looks like a money pit. The money is not your money, it's our money. And it ought to be authentically and transparently handled.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. And next up, we have Dave Eagle speaking on the demographics report.
Thank you, Board. Good to meet you, Ms. Morawski. My name is Dave Eagle and County Commissioner Precinct 4. Just wanted to talk about statistics for a second. Understanding the median. Statistics is a branch of mathematics, involves collection and study of data, that allows researchers to make inferences and determinations about a certain topic. Median is a middle number in a sorted list of either ascending or descending numbers. And I wanted to come up here and just let you know I appreciate this demographic study that you did, because it's going to help in our evaluation of whether or not we should be expanding our jail. And it's important because the median age here is 48.2, according to the demographic study that you've given to us tonight. And based on TDC numbers from 2021, 74% of the inmates in prison and state jail, 74% are under the age of 48. And more importantly is that 27.6% of the inmates in jail and prison are between the ages of 26 and 35. Well, those are relevant numbers for us in the county over here when we're talking about jail numbers and whether we should expand jail, build a new jail, how much should we do it, how big should it be bigger, etc. And you may recall that we had a vote in County Commissioners Court last week to try to put a May bond together in $21 million, and it was voted down. Perhaps it'll come back in November, but I say this because 6 years ago when I took office, the powers that be wanted a new jail, all new jail, brand new jail, dozy old jail, to the tune of $100 to $120 million. That's been going on for 6 years. Last November, we found out that the old jail is structurally sound. We've done some work with looking at the plumbing and having research done, and the old jail is not dozable yet. So we got them down to half that much, from 100 to 120 million down to 50 million. Hey, let's do 50 million for half as much. Had that on the ballot in November, and the voters voted that one down. So now, guess what? They're down to 21 million. So I've heard a lot of talk about if you don't do something now, it's just going to keep going up. Well, we've gone from 120 million down to 21 to get what they need. So I say that to just remind you guys that if this demographic study was done in anticipation of throwing out a bond at the voters, please be aware of coming at them with facts, tangible assets, and numbers. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Beatty. That concludes the public comment section of this meeting. Next is to consider action on items discussed in closed session, personnel recommendations, and administrative contracts. Do I have a motion?
Madam President, I move that we accept the recommendations presented to us in closed session.
That's a motion by Ms. Lana. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Second by Ms. Townsend. All in favor, raise your hand. Let the record show that was all in favor, 7-0 vote. Motion by Ms. Alana, second by Ms. Townsend. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Does anybody have anything that they would like to pull for discussion?
Madam President, I'd like to pull 11F.
Okay. Go ahead.
So every month we go over donations from the community. I'd like to go over those quickly. Donation from the Optimist Club of Granbury to the GISD Children's Charity Account to fund child nutrition negative accounts for $456.38. Donation from anonymous donor Granbury Children's Charity Account to fund child nutrition negative accounts at Bacchus campus for $300. Donation from the Acton Elementary PTO to 4th grade field trip to Austin in the amount of $6,426.75. Donation from Barry and Ann Van Dues to GMS to fund the outdoor ropes course repair in the amount of $2,500. Donation from the Optimist Club of Granbury to GMS to fund the outdoor ropes course repair in the amount of $500. Donation from Julia Pinnell to GMS in appreciation for art backdrop for winter ceremony of $60. Donation from Granbury Pirates Boys Golf Booster Club to the Pirate Boys golf team to supplement their travel in the amount of $3,300. Donation from the Lady Pirate Golf Booster Club to the Lady Pirate Golf team to supplement travel in the amount of $2,100. Donation from Stowaways Booster Club to Stowaways Drill Team for team gear in the amount of $1,895.52. Donation from Rockberry Inc., Cheryl Winrich to GHS Bleacher Creatures to purchase supplies in the amount of $50. Donation from Derek and Danielle Thomas to GHS Bleacher Creatures purchase overalls in the amount of $65. Donation from Kelly Jeffrey to the GHS Auto Tech Department for supplies in the amount of $200. Donation to the American Legion 491 to the MJC ROTC Rifle and PT team in the amount of $1,636.53. Donation from the Optimist Club of Granbury to the GHS Junior Optimist Club to fund Uncrustables for the athletic department in the amount of $800. And donation from Christian Brothers, Michael and Donna Loader, to the Community Relations Department for employee appreciation gift cards in the amount of $100 for a grand total from the community this month of $20,390.18. Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you to all the booster clubs and the organizations and private donors and the anonymous donors out there. We appreciate your support and all you do for our students in Granbury ISD. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
So moved, Madam President.
I have a motion by Mr. Moore. Do I have a second?
A second.
Second by Mrs. Lowry. All in favor to approve the consent agenda items, raise your hand. Let the record show that is a 7-0 vote. All in favor? Moving on to discussion and action items. Agenda item 12A, consider approval of the 2025-2026 academic calendar presented by Ms. Lisa Oliver.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. It's my privilege to show you guys a version, or the final version, the proposed version of the academic calendar for next school year. In your memo, you will see a much more detailed explanation of how we got to this process. The calendar development includes, the majority of that is the staff input. That's what we started with. And then we take that back to the admin team and eventually to principals to review all of the staff input, all of the other data that we have to consider, including state requirements and staff development, and we came together with some versions that were eventually sent to staff vote. We did include quite a few parents and guardians in this process with the District Advisory Council, and also parents and guardians who submitted surveys last year saying they were interested in the development process for this coming year. So we'll offer that again if there's parents and guardians and our community members that want to be involved in this process next year. So what you're looking at is the proposed calendar, and if you guys have any questions that aren't already in front of you on the memo or the other data.
I was surprised that it said that this draft was 51% were in favor of this draft. What was the difference between, I mean, I would have expected a much larger amount. What was going on?
That's a good question. So I went through the last 5 years since COVID, and we looked at the board memos and the calendars presented at the last 5 years. So that's probably what your memory's going off of. And the staff vote in the previous years have always been on two calendars. One that was a copy-paste version from the year prior. Since 2020, we have had that third week of a 15-day Christmas break. Well, the data this year really showed, and you guys have that in front of you, that, and you probably hear this from teachers, there between Labor Day and Christmas break, there's no other days off for staff. And to be able to do that, you have to take away from Christmas break. There's not another chunk of time to take away from unless we wanted to start talking about spring break or Thanksgiving break. The Christmas break, we were, when compared to other districts, really just Toller and Granbury ISD that still had that 15-day break. So we still have, compared to other districts that have already approved their calendar, because
We would normally like to approve this in December or January, but we didn't have January meeting. So we still have a longer Christmas break for staff. It's 12 days for staff and 14 days for students, but we took those days to, first of all, really secure Good Friday off as a holiday instead of being a bad weather day or a work day. And then to add you'll see in October, there's a 4-day weekend for staff. So that was really responsive to the staff data.
Thank you so much. And the spring break, is that with Tarleton or?
The spring break is with Tarleton, correct, because of our resident program. And surprisingly, that wasn't, that was one of the questions on the staff survey. How important is it that our calendar align with neighboring districts or align with universities? And that really wasn't of high importance. You'll notice that this calendar already builds in early release on the day before Christmas, which is the last day of the first semester, and then the last day of school. And that is different than what you're used to in years past, because we would typically see if we had extra minutes, because this calendar builds in the equivalent of 1.8 school days for instructional minutes to be used in cases of emergency. So in years past, we would wait and did we use the minutes? Do we have some? And we would approve early release. Well, we decided that leaves a lot of limbo. And it's just better off to go ahead and build it into the calendar. So those are instructional minutes, the total minutes as stated on your memo. That includes the early release days, those 2 early. So it's 165 full days for students with 2 early release days. And just so everybody knows, every school year staff works 187 days. That is the baseline, and that's required. We have some flexibility with student minutes, but you'll see that we've only scheduled in 820 extra minutes. If you'll remember back in COVID year, the whole reason why the 3-week Christmas break ever started back in 2020 was because we had 6,160 minutes built in that school year. So we were able to use those extra minutes for 3-week Christmas break. And the next 4 years, staff just voted on 2 versions. One was a duplicate of the calendar before with a 3-week Christmas break, and the other one was just another option. But it was just a vote, not really an opportunity to speak up what it was you liked about both calendars. So we started with the staff input first this time.
When you look at it, you have a holiday every month except February, but you do have a staff development day.
So that's actually there were 2 versions presented to staff. The other version had, you'll notice that today, February 17th, will be a student holiday. President's Day is a holiday for students next year, a work day for staff, because it's the end of the 4th grading period. The other version that staff had an opportunity to vote on was a 3-day weekend for staff. So we would have had February 13th off. But with 51% of the votes, it was half and half. And I think you can see from the rest of the data, it really is half and half. If you didn't like the 15 days at Christmas, you were along with half of the staff. And if you did like the 15 days at Christmas, you were along with half of the staff. So it's divided, and I think that this has the best happy medium.
Well, then we can always come back and make changes if we need to. We have done that before, but this looks like a good calendar to me. And with that, I move that we approve this calendar as presented.
All right, I have a motion by Ms. Alana. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Rugerly. All in favor, raise your hand. Let the record show that's a 7-0 vote. All in favor. Moving on to the next item, consider approval of a teacher incentive allotment payment plan presented by our amazing Stacy Brown.
Good evening, board. In front of you, you all have a copy of the teacher incentive allotment district spending plan. You have a teacher incentive allotment district spending plan from last year, but after meeting with our local designation district committee, we changed it for our adoption and approval of the plan. And so we wanted it to be reflected in this year as well. So the teacher spending plan actually, the purpose of TIA is to recruit, retain, and reward our most effective teachers. And so specifically, the statutory requirement says you have to give 90% of the allotment funds directly to student-facing instructional staff on the campus where they earn the designation. Our committee knows that we are competing with districts around us and was absolutely wonderful in saying, you know what, we're going to give 93% of the total allotment to the teachers that earn the designation. So it was very important to the team to say, listen, we're competing with other districts, so we want to give more than what other districts around us do. Do you have any questions?
I just know this has taken a lot of work and a lot of time. And I thank you and everyone that has worked with you on this. It takes a great deal of time.
We have a great
for the teachers that jump in on this, it's going to take a great deal of their time and a lot of effort. But it will be worth it. I think in the long run, they will see that they will grow professionally, and I think it will be a very valuable for them.
Have you gotten any feedback from teachers yet on this?
Oh, absolutely. The teachers actually, our committee is 52 committee members, 39 of them are teachers. Go for pre-K through 12, from AVID, fine arts, four-core area, athletics, etc. And so this was actually written by that committee. And so yes, absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate all y'all's hard work.
Sure, thank you.
And you have an email address that's dedicated to feedback that anybody can use and ask questions and give feedback to the system, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it goes to multiple, it goes to me and Carla. But at least we know one of us will be checking it. And so it's TIA@GranburyISD.org.
And after we roll this out, if we need to make changes, is it possible to tweak it so that it better serves our teachers in the district?
Absolutely. Part of the great thing about teacher incentive allotment is you can amend and extend. So once the initial application is approved, you go into data capture, but you can continue to amend it and add, expanding the eligibility, expanding and changing different weights and different ways of collecting student growth measures and a variety. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Ms. Alana referred to the Herculean effort that it is for you to produce that. Is that a limiting factor in how much we can expand the program?
So I will tell you there are two paths in order to reach teacher incentive allotment. The local designation committee is the one that designs it and submits the application to TIA. That one is one where we take the teacher evaluation and we take data from a student growth measure. The teacher is not submitting anything. We're collecting the data. We're taking the information on the teacher observation. That is not specifically, I would say, effort-driven in a direct sense from the teachers. They're helping their students. The second option is a national board certification. National board certification is basically an advanced professional certification for pre-K through 12. So it adds a level onto their certificate. It allows them to work in other states if they want to, but it also adds to their level of expertise. That one is module-based, and it is basically, they go through a peer review section, they have to pass assessments. So those are the two paths to get to teacher incentive allotment, but the local designation system does not have the studying, the documenting, et cetera, et cetera. National board does, but it has a different certification. So it's like going through another, getting a certification in special education or mathematics or something. So two different pathways. They can transfer to each other. So for example, all of our teachers, 99% of our teachers can do national board certification right now, and it's reimbursable through TIA. And so they can do that right now, but we also have a local designation system, and as we expand that, they can come over and earn higher levels on the local designation. So there's not a delay. If they want to do it right now, they can. Does that make sense?
And one more thing to add, I think, to your question is that we did talk earlier about the amount of work that it is on your staff. And so eventually, we hope that some of that 7% of money that we keep could, in other districts, have hired a position. You want to talk about that?
So there's other districts that, well, for example, Fort Worth, they got $12 million in designations last year. So they're allowed to, as a district, to keep 10%. So if you figure that amount would be enough to hire one staff person to continue to do that. That's not something we have right now. So that being said, that'd be great, but we've got to get our teachers the money and the designations first. So that would be awesome.
So I'll say again that when I was sitting behind you before I was up here, that I don't get to see the expression on your face is always so happy when you present to us and you're all smiles, and so I'll reflect that back to the rest of those guys for you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay.
Any further questions from Ms. Niebuhr? All right, do I have a motion to approve the teacher incentive allotment payment plan?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Bolton. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Mrs. Townsend. All in favor, raise your hands. That's a 7-0 vote, all in favor. Okay, moving on to the gifted and talented, updated gifted and talented policy and procedures manual for the 2024-2025 school year, presented by Carla Mullen.
Good evening. In front of you on your board memo, you have that the Texas State Plan for the Education of the Gifted and Talented Students was revised recently, incorporating a few minor vocabulary changes that we reflected those changes in our plan. Additionally, we have revised our GISD forms and identification procedures to ensure consistency in our identification process throughout the district. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer any of those.
I do.
Okay.
The student assessment to identification, can you explain that a little bit more, why that change happened?
Okay, are you referring to?
Yeah, it's one of the vocabulary word changes on the front table where it says the fidelity of services, student assessment, it's crossed out and it's now